Hello everyone, my name is Frank and welcome to the first part in Fun with Flags and History's The Yugoslav Wars. Unlike the previous series I had done on Greece, this will take a slightly different tone. Namely, that this series will not focus on the Yugoslav Wars chronologically, or even as a whole, but rather certain events that were interesting, at least I think were interesting, as well as groups, organizations that I felt were interesting to cover. So, let's begin with our current subject. Arkan and Arkan's Tigers. So, who were Arkan's Tigers? Arkan's Tigers was an unofficial nickname for the Serb Volunteer Guard, which was a paramilitary organization with allegiances to Serbian belligerents in the Yugoslav War and the conflict as a whole. Namely, Republika Srpska and Serbian Krajina. But before we discuss this group, let's discuss the man behind it, Arkan himself. Željko Raznatović, better known by his nickname of Arkan, was born on April 17, 1952 in the small village of Brežice in the Socialist Republic of Slovenia, in Yugoslavia. His father, Veliko Raznatović, I apologize in advance if I'm butchering any of these names at all, was born in Rijeka, Crnoljevica, and had participated in the communist partisan liberation of Pristina, the capital of Kosovo. Eventually, Željko's father would become a decorated officer within the Yugoslav Air Force for his involvement during World War II, reaching the rank of colonel. Veliko was stationed in Slovenian Styria at the time when his fourth child, Željko, was born. The young Željko spent part of his childhood in Zagreb and Pančevo, before his father eventually took the family to Yugoslav capital of Belgrade. Life for Željko as an army brat did not serve him well, however. He grew up with three older sisters in a strict militaristic household, as he was abused regularly by his father. His parents eventually divorced when Željko became a teenager. Željko, as a teenager, was a bit of a troubled youth, and this would develop his character for the rest of his life. In 1966, Željko was arrested for stealing purses in and around Taj Maidan Park. He then spent a year in a juvenile detention center for the offense. Because of this, Željko's father sent him off to the seaside town of Kotor in Montenegro, where he would join the Yugoslav People's Navy. Or at least, he would have if he didn't have other plans. He somehow ended up in France at the age of 15, where he then was arrested and deported home by the French police in 1969. At the time, he was sentenced to a detention center in Valjevo for 3 years to serve time for burglaries that he had done in France. While he served in prison, he had formed his own prison gang inside the walls of the prison. This leadership style and organizational skills is what led Arkan to turn from a small-time crook into the leader of a Serbian paramilitary that committed horrible crimes in the former Yugoslavia. While paramilitary organizations in the Yugoslav Wars were somewhat common, such as the Garda Pantari or the Serbian Guard, Arkan's Tigers was different in the sense that their origins as well as their actions throughout the war. The Serbian Volunteer Guard, or Arkan's Tigers, was formed on October 11, 1990 by members of Delije Sever, an ultra-football support group that were fans of the Red Star Belgrade football club. Oddly enough, the Guard mainly consisted of members from the Delije Sever Hooligans Club and personal friends of Arkan himself. The Serb Volunteer Guard was under the command of the Territorial Defense, a segment of the Yugoslav Armed Forces created as a type of National Guard to defend Yugoslavia through the form of armed resistance. However, the Territorial Defense by 1990 had splintered off into a de facto paramilitary group that had sworn allegiances to their nations rather than Yugoslavia as a whole. The Guard was led by Željko Raznatović, nicknamed Arkan, a Serbian mobster, and Milorad Ulemek, nicknamed Legija, a sub-officer within the Yugoslav People's Army and a former soldier within the French Foreign Legion. As a result of these consequences, the territorial defense that had taken control of the Serb Volunteer Guard was in charge of the territories of Croatia, populated predominantly by Serbian Croatians during the early to mid-1990s. So, the Serb Volunteer Guard was headquartered in the city of Erdut, a city in eastern Croatia with a large Serbian population. The Serb Volunteer Guard got its arms and supplies from the reserve supplies of the Serbian police force at the time during the war in Croatia and Bosnia. The SDG consisted of around 200 men at its core, with approximately 500 to 1,000 men at its height. Despite these small numbers, they were very much a military force that was feared by its opponents. After the Bosnian War broke out, the Guard headed to the Bosnian front, which resulted in the group committing acts of ethnic cleansing, including mass killings and deportations of Bosniak citizens. When war broke out in the former Socialist Federal Republic of Croatia in 1991, which was caused by both a strong desire for Croatians to secede from Yugoslavia as well as Serbian Croats who resisted attempts at secession, Arkan moved his troops through the eastern Croatian region of Vukovar, where the self-proclaimed Serbian Autonomous Oblast of Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmia was located. Raznatovic reportedly had a dispute with military operations with Krajina leader Milan Martic. In Bosnia, the SDG notably fought in battles in and around Zvornik, Bijeljina, and Brčko, mostly against Bosniak and Bosniak Croat paramilitary groups, including killings of civilians. In late 1995, Raznatovic's troops fought in the area of Banja Luka, Sanski Most, and Prijedor. In October 1995, he left Sanski Most as the Army of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, ARBIH, reclaimed the city. The Serb Volunteer Guard under Arkan's command massacred hundreds of people in eastern Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. While in the early ethnic cleansing campaigns in eastern Bosnia, this unit had a major role. In autumn 1995, Arkan's troops fought in the area of Banja Luka, Sanski Most, and Prijedor, where they were routed. Raznatovic personally led most of these operations and rewarded his most efficient officers and soldiers with ranks, medals, and eventually looted goods. Several younger officers were rewarded for their actions in and around Kopači Rit in Rijelo Birdo. Even one of his most trusted men, Radovan Stanisic, was sent to Italy to broker a deal between Arkan's Tigers, the Serbian Volunteer Guard, and the Italian Camorra, which of course involved Italian Camorra boss Francesco Schiavone. According to Roberto Saviano, Schiavone eased arms smuggling into Serbia by stopping the Albanian mobsters' blocking of weapon routes, and helped money transfer into Serbia in the form of humanitarian aid amid the international sanctions. In exchange, the Camorra acquired companies, enterprises, shops, and farms in Serbia at optimal prices. The Serb Volunteer Guard was officially disbanded in 1996. Besides Arkan, a notable member of the Guard was his right-hand man, Colonel Nebojša Djordjevic, who was murdered in late 1996. Another notable member was Milorad Ulemek, who is now serving a 40-year sentence for his involvement in the assassination of Serbia's pro-Western Prime Minister Zoran Dindic in 2003. The Serb Volunteer Guard eventually merged into the Special Operations Unit, which was a special unit organized for the RDB, Yugoslavia's secret police under Slobodan Milosevic. But one may ask, whatever happened to the man Arkan himself? Good question. After the war, Arkan was seen as a popular icon to both the Serbian people and his enemies. To the Serbians, Arkan was seen as both a folk hero and a patriot to his country. On the other hand, compared to the Bosnians and Croatians, Arkan was seen as an object of both fear and hatred to him, given what him and his unit did to both Croatia and Bosnia during the wars. In the post-war period after the Dayton Agreement was signed, Raznatovic returned to his interests in sports and private business. In June of 1996, he took over a second division soccer team, FK Obilic, which he soon turned into a top-caliber team, even winning the 1997 to 1998 Yugoslav League Championship. However, according to Franklin Foer in his book How Soccer Explains the World, Raznatovic threatened players on opposing teams if they scored against Obilic. This threat was underlined by the thousands of SDG veterans that filled his team's home field, chanting threats and, on occasion, pointing pistols at opposing players during matches. One player told the British football magazine 442 that he was locked in a garage where his team played Obilic. Europe's football governing body, the Union of European Football Associations, UEFA, considered prohibiting Obilic from participation in continental competitions because of its connections to Raznatovic. In response to this, Raznatovic stepped away from the position of president of the team and gave his seat to his wife, Svetlana. Minor fun fact I'll probably add, his wife, Svetlana, is actually a very famous Serbian pop star in Serbia. On January 15, 2000, Arkan was assassinated in the Intercontinental Beograd Hotel in Belgrade, Yugoslavia. The killer, Dobrosav Gavrić, a 23-year-old junior police officer, mobile brigade member, had ties to the underworld and was on sick leave at the time. He walked up alone towards his target from behind. Raznatovic was sitting and chatting with his two friends and, according to BBC Radio, was filling out a betting slip. Gavrić waited for a few minutes, calmly walked up behind the party, and rapidly fired a succession of bullets from his CZ-99 pistol. Raznatovic was shot in his left eye and lapsed into a coma on the spot. His bodyguard, Zvonko Matejovic, put him in a car and rushed him to a hospital. He died on the way. According to his widow Svetlana, Raznatovic died in her arms as they were driving to the hospital. His companions, Milenko Mandic, a business manager, and Dragan Garic, a police inspector, were also shot to death by Gavrić, who in turn was shot and wounded by Matejovic. A female bystander was seriously wounded in the shootout as well. After complicated surgery, Gavrić survived but was disabled and confined to a wheelchair as a result of a spinal wound. Dobrosav Gavrić pleaded innocent but was convicted and sentenced to 19 years in prison. His accomplices received 3 to 15 years each after a year-long trial in 2002. However, the district verdict was overturned by the Supreme Court because of a lack of evidence and a vagueness of the first trial process. A new trial was conducted in 2006, ending on October 9, 2006, with guilty verdicts upheld for Gavrić as well as his accomplices, Milan Dorijic and Dragan Nikolic. Each man was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Arkan's legacy, despite his shady dealings and atrocious war crimes in Bosnia and Croatia, are looked upon with favor in Serbia, despite all these things. To this day, he is somewhat looked at positively to Serbian common folk. Guys, I hope you liked this video, and I hope you found it informational. And if you did, of course, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. I truly appreciate the support. If you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see next in the channel, be sure to leave your comments down below. Be sure to talk about it. If you also want to support the channel in a really good way, share. Sharing these videos, share it to your friends, share it to your family, share it to your grandma if you want. I really don't care. If they're going to like history, if they like history, share this video. They'll probably like it. Maybe not. Who knows? But the best way you can support this channel, if you're new here or if you're not, click the subscribe button down below and click the notification bell so that way you're first to know when these videos come up. It's the best way to support my channel, and I gladly appreciate it. Anyways, guys, this is Frank for Fun with Flags and History, signing off. Have a good one. Enjoy yourselves.
Return to Croatia, to our Croatia cousins.
Come on, motherfucker!
Come on, motherfuckers, come on! Come on, motherfuckers, come on! Yeah, come on, motherfuckers, come on! Come on, motherfuckers, come on!
Check it out.
Come on, motherfuckers, come on!
Yeah.
Come on, motherfuckers, come on!